What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Be Better podcast, episode 16, with a great friend of mine, big mentor, kind of made me the person I am today in the sales world, Ashley Behr. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
It's been really awesome, seeing, I guess, like your story and like learning more about you over these years, and obviously all the help that you've made to me and all these other people too. But I'm just gonna say, like, for some people who don't know who you are, like, kind of, could you give me just a quick rundown so that for the strangers out there?
Yeah. I'm a genuine weirdo. Very awkward most of the time, but I guess the Cliff Note version that people like to hear, right? So I'm a mom of three. I have a 7-year-old and 2-year-old twins. I grew up in northern Michigan on a farm. I now live in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, I live outside of St. Louis, Missouri, but I have two dogs. I have a female bull mastiff. Her name is Kevin, and I have another mutt. She's a pit bull husky, and her name is Ren. I do not enjoy long walks on a beach. I think they're miserable. But I do love a good picnic in the woods. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice, nice. That's fantastic. So, before we go any further, I just need to have everybody know, can you explain Kevin and the name?
Oh, yeah. So when my husband and I started dating, he took me to see the movie Up, and I love that big bird. Like the
Kevin.
whole movie, right? Kevin. And at the end, they were like, Kevin's a girl. So Um, it was actually the night he proposed to me. I get on Facebook and I go to Bull Mastiff Rescue. Of course, I follow all of those pages. And there she was. Her name was Leela, but I decided it was not Leela. And she was 6 months old and she was from a purebred breeder. We were in Michigan and I told the lady we would be there in 13 hours to pick her up. He had no idea. My parents had no idea. Um, So we drove all the way to Kansas City from Michigan that night, like 2 hours after he proposed, and we went and got Kevin. And so Kevin's a girl, and we've had her now. She'll be 4 in February. So
I love the story. I love it the first time I heard it, and I love it the 20th, 30th time that I've heard it now. It's just so funny, but so genuine too. What was Josh thinking about whenever he was like, damn, I just proposed to this girl. Now we're on a spontaneous road trip to go get a dog.
I mean, dogs are in my DNA. Like when I have bad days, I go to the dog park, you know? And so I don't think he really like he was like, you did not get a dog. I'm like, no, really, I bought her. And he was like, how much money did you spend? I'm like, don't worry about it. We're getting in the car and we're going to get a dog. Um,
Did
I
you
think
tell him
my
how
dad
far it
was like
was?
more mad. Oh
Did you
yeah, I
tell?
told him we were
Okay,
going home.
because
So
I was
it's
about
only
to
eight and
say,
a half hours home from Michigan, but Kevin was 13 and a half hours. And then we had to drive back home another 3 hours. So we were in the car for 16 hours and Lincoln was 3. I did not care. Um, and he was like so mad. He's like, I can't believe you paid that much for a dog. I'm like, but it's our dog. And then once we got her, it was like game over. They're thick as thieves. She doesn't leave him. It's his dog. Like I thought she was my dog, but Ren's mine. Um, I got Ren in college, and so it was me and Ren before anything else, right? So she'll be 11 next week. So it's crazy.
yeah, both of my dogs. Elvis is 2.5. Nelly is turning 2. I mean, it's just wild how quickly the time goes. And I mean, especially in dog years, but like just you get them one day and it just zips by, and here you are 11 years later with with Ren, or it's absolutely wild how it plays out. But despite all the dog stuff,
Okay, wait. Can we
yeah,
just talk about Elvis really quick? Because I still, to this day, I tell this story quite often actually to people. When you had first gotten Elvis and we were on a team meeting, you did not know you were not on mute, and you said, GD Elvis, did you just pee on my couch?
oh
And
yeah,
you lost it. And everyone was like, what is he talking about? And that's the day we found out you got a dog.
yeah. So we were in a 800 square foot. So this is right when Celeste and I first started living together. We were in an 800 square foot apartment, third floor. Wasn't supposed to have animals. We ended up having Elvis, and Elvis just he he was a puppy, and it would just piss everywhere and do everything else everywhere. You know what I mean? He was a puppy, And we lived in that apartment for a year. By the end of it, we raised Elvis and 11 chickens in an apartment.
For chickens, that's right.
And then when the chickens
Oh,
got big enough, they got, 2.5 months old. We moved them to the outdoor coop, which is at my grandpa's house. But yeah,
yeah,
so we had a zoo in that apartment for a little bit of time there. It was very, very funny. And now he's
yeah,
a big boy. Now he's still he doesn't pee in the house anymore, but he likes to chew
that's
up things
good.
when I'm not looking. So how about that? But what a monster. What an absolute monster. But despite all of our dog stuff, I do want to get into something that's really interesting to me about you, Ashley, is that like you have literally since the day I met you, you've been just like a sales powerhouse, right? Like that's just what you eat, sleep,
Yeah.
and breathe. You dominate that market. You've taught me 99% of what I know. You've taught hundreds of other reps the same deals. How did that get started? Could you kind of walk me through like your first real sales job and like how that transitioned to where you are now?
I think my first real sales job was selling my dad on everything that I ever wanted. But my first paid sales job was I don't know, some people count serving,
I
right?
do.
Because you have to get the upsells,
Yeah, I
right?
count that. You sell the product. Absolutely.
You sell this, yeah, you sell the food, you sell the upsells, you sell your tip, you sell yourself, right? So I was a server at Outback. I was a server at Outback for 11 years. Um, and my dad's in sales. I think it's really important that people know my family background. So they're all a bunch of entrepreneurs. My uncle has his own business, my dad has his own business. All my cousins work for my uncle or my dad. um, and my dad's always been in sales. He was a traveling salesman growing up. So we spent summers going to different states wherever he had to sell. Um, so I would say it's like kind of in my DNA, my personality and who I am. But I started serving and I just got, I wouldn't say addicted, but I really enjoyed that the amount of effort I put in was the amount of money I would make. So if I wanted to be lazy that day, I knew I was coming home with 20 bucks. I didn't take any tables, right? I'm being lazy. But if I really put in my full effort, then I could bring home $100. Or when I got to bartending, like
Great.
bartending at Michigan State, people don't tell you this, but you make bank as a bartender on game day. That's where I found like my real love for selling was game day. It's so fast paced and you could almost sales is math, right? Like I taught you guys this. It's math. You just walk backwards into what you want to make and how hard you have to work. And then you decide if that's acceptable. And so the fact that I could build a formula, regardless of where I was or what I was selling, to say, I want to make $100,000. I knew that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to push the boundaries and the limits of financial freedom. I grew up, and like I said, in a very small town in Heartland, Michigan. Um, I wouldn't say we were on the extremely poor side of the house, but like we weren't the rich kids, right? We had to collect cans to do our sports and all of that good fun stuff. And um, with my dad being a salesman, jobs were on and off, and um, I didn't want that. Right. Once I had Lincoln is when the light really flipped, and I was like, I don't ever want my kids to hear something like the bank's taking our house. Like that's been my. I actually have it on my first day at Vivial. I made a why I work hard. Um, and I printed it out and I put it in my cube, and it's literally Lincoln and this house in the woods, and then underneath it says, "Don't take my house." And so I started serving. Guys, I'm all over the place. That's fine. That's who I am. I'm just a weirdo.
I'm
Friends,
the same way. It's
listeners.
okay.
Um, got to Vivial. I started off selling print advertising. How exciting is that, right? Yellow pages, for those that don't know, the big yellow phone book that came to your house. And they had like 3 digital products. And it's like listing management, YP.com, like, and a website. That's what we could sell. Um, and I just thought that was so fun. Like it was a strategy game to figure out how I could get business owners to spend the least amount of money, but make the most amount of money. So the next time I called them, they would spend whatever I told them to,
That's exactly right.
which sounds like a scam, but it's not, right? It's really meant to put businesses in a place. I wanted somebody to tell them the truth the way I wish somebody did to my family, right? Don't scam them, tell them the truth. Give them that call and say, hey, guess what? You don't have to spend $2,000. You really need to spend 198 for at least 6 months. After that, you're probably going to need to give me 2 grand because it's not going to do what you need it to do. So, um, I think I did really well. I sold mostly digital. I was terrible at my print. So, right, moved over to the first digital only team under a gentleman by the name of Chad Anderson.
He said
And
something funny today that real quick. He said something funny today, and I thought about you immediately. You know what he said today?
oh,
He said UDAC,
oh yeah.
and I go, Chad. There's like 6 people in this world that would ever use that word, and Ashley and you and I are the only 3 on this side of this this country. I was
Oh my
like,
God.
so he said UDAC, and I was like, this thought about you, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's so true. Um, yeah, got the UDAC. So we started there. And then I figured out the math problem, right? That's where I really learned how to break it down. How many calls do I have to make a day? Because here's the thing, right? So often in sales, um, reps just think they can get in and make that top rep. So when they're interviewing, right, the hiring manager is always like, "Yeah, you can make 200,000 here." And it's always that outperformer, right? And net reps never ask, which amazes me. So if you're interviewing out there, the best question to ask is, what does your lowest rep make? What does your lowest rep make before they're fired? And that like it could go 2 ways for you in the interviewing process. Make sure you have a follow-up question. But starting at that point, that's where you know how to start building that castle of where you want to go, right? So if the bottom rep is making 70K a year, okay, if you make 70K a year, and I think I told you this when I interviewed you, if you make less than 70K a year, you will be fired.
Don't ruin it. I wanted to say that. You did say that to me, and I was going to share it, so I'll say it. So I remember in our interview process, we had an interview on the phone, and then you're like, hey, no bullshit, man. Like this isn't for everybody. You're either going to come here and kill it, or you're not going to make it, right? It's feast or famine, right? And you just laid it out for me straight up, so I didn't have any false expectations. And then when I came in for the interview to meet you, you were like, Nate, what do you want to make? And at the time, the most I ever made was probably like 45K, right? I
Hmm.
was like, and I tried to play it like a hot shot. I said, "Oh, if I make 65K, it'll allow me to keep my lifestyle." You look at me
Hmm.
dead in my face, cold as stone, and go, "If you make 65K here, I'll fire you."
Yeah.
And I remember driving home, I'm like, "Holy shit." I'm like, the opportunity to make life-changing income is here if I
Yeah.
just follow the process. And for all the people out there that worked with me, and actually, because you were my boss, like I didn't have a sale of Vivial until I was 5 months in. Like I had
Hmm.
half-ass split sales, like where you would do 99% of the work and I would just kind of be there. But I never closed my own deal for 5 or so months. And then remember, you told me you're like, oh, you just had the it click moment.
Yeah.
Right? You just had the it click moment, and then as soon as it clicked, it was just an upward trajectory from there. But I think a lot of that is because of the formulas and the science that you put in place that allowed me to do that. Like every month when we would have we'd have our one-on-one, or whatever. I can't remember if it was like every month or every 2 weeks.
Two
Can't remember.
weeks.
2 weeks. There
2
you go.
weeks.
But you
I
would
couldn't
come
let
to
you
me.
run free that long.
Right. You would come with me though with all this analytics, and you'd be like, Nate, on average, it takes you 26 calls to make an appointment. Your AVO, right? On average, on every deal, you're selling X amount of dollars every deal. And you were like, if you want to make X, like you already had the formula wrote out for me. When I told you I wanted to make 150K, you wrote out the formula, and we were pretty fucking close to getting there. So like, it was just incredible how you broke it down to a science. And I know you were kind of leading into that, so I want to get back onto
Yeah.
that topic. But like, what made you think of that? Because that is ingenious, and not many people in the sales world do that. They fly by the seat of their pants, and there's no rhythm to their rhyme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what made you
I
want to?
think I've always like, so I have to tell this funny story, and then I think a lot more will make sense to people watching. So ever since I was a kid, my dad wanted to kill me, but I was probably 7, 8 years old. And we had in a double wide trailer, right? But we were fancy. We had our paver patio out back with this half fallen apart hot tub that some neighbor down the street gave us, right? But on that side, my dad had to take off half the drywall to put a light over the hot tub, right, in the garage. And I was like, well, how does that light turn on? And my dad's like, well, you flip the switch and it turns on. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, why does the wire stop here? And I can't remember my exact words, but I made my dad rip down the entire wall of drywall and then take apart some of the wire to explain to me the hot and cold side, right? Like, here's your positive, here's your negative. This is how it connects. This is how it turns on the light bulb, and unscrew the light. But we spent hours out in that garage because I had to know how it all worked. And that remained true for like the rest of my life. It's the way my brain is kind of wired, is like everything has to have a starting point to have an ending point. And sales is no different. So when I was a sales rep, Chad told me I could make whatever I wanted to make. And I said, I want to make 200,000. Is that possible here? And they said, it's uncapped commission. Now, before that, I'd sold apartments and serving, right? At the apartments, they told me it was uncapped commission, but I hit the cap. And I was like, what? This is why I went to Vivial. And because I figured out the math. I'm like, okay, so that means I have to see, I think it was something like 36 people a month to be able to sell 24, which is what I wanted to make. And so I would like cold call people that like came to see the apartment like 2 years ago. I would just get this big binder out and I'm like, I gotta get these appointments booked. And so I hit the cap. And they told me, they're like, well, no one's broken the cap before. So we've always just said it's no cap. Like, that's terrible. I'm leaving you. I'm going somewhere. So they told me uncapped commission. Actually, Brad Chandler did. And so then I started to work backwards. And at the time when we first started on that digital only channel, there was very little data. We didn't track calls. We had just gotten phone burner. There were like maybe 800 leads total, all in Salesforce for the entire company. There was like nothing because it was all print based.
Right.
And so it was like Alex and Chris Ackles, myself, Tom, Haley. Like, we were getting so sick. Chad used to make us go and get 10 business cards a day and manually put them in the system. Manually every morning before our team meeting. And so I started with that. I was like, okay, how many, if I go collect 10 business cards, how many of these can I get an appointment with? And I would just start writing stuff down. And eventually we got the data and analytics there. And so when I started to get to a point where, because I was selling supervisor, so was a rep, I hit 16 out of 16 months in a row, which is fantastic.
Unheard of.
I sold,
Unheard of in the company, by the way.
the other cool thing, I wrote my entire year quota on February 17th. What year was that? 2019.
No,
so
it had been 2018. I started in 2019.
2018. Yeah, that's right. 2018. So I wrote my entire quota by February, and then I asked like, okay, am I done for the year? Right. But no, I did it because at that point we had the math and I knew what I wanted to make, when I wanted to make it, and how much I wanted to make. So as a hybrid or as a selling supervisor, I had 5 telephone reps underneath me, print reps. And Brad and Rich, they were like, okay, if you can get them, like they were all on like performance plans. And they're like, if you can get them up, then you can get into the leadership course. Because I wanted to run a sales team. I figured out the math problem. So out of those 5, 4 of them got off their PIP plan. One of them was just hopeless. But we built them a math problem, and they had to set 10 appointments, but it's so those are called lagging indicators: set, scheduled, sold. But people don't look at the leading, like what work do you actually have to do to get those lagging indicators. And so I created them a plan versus leading indicators. You had to make 60 calls a day. You had to pick a vertical. You had to pick a franchise. And your time would be spent between the two of them. So you would spend half your day calling, say, home advisor, hi boo. And the other half of your day, you would be hunting a franchise. Go get you a franchise. Eventually you'll land one, right? And so based off of that, you can break it down per person to get what you want to make. And once I did that, then I got my sales team. And then I knew, like, I guess they should really know more about me, huh? So when I got to Vivial, I had negative $198 in my bank account. I was working 2 jobs. My fiance was working at the time, was working 2 jobs. We had a 3-month-old son, and we were living above his grandma's garage in this like tiny, it was literally just a room. There was nothing. We slept on a futon.
Like a studio?
Yeah, like a studio. There was no bathroom in it, but that's where we were living. And so we had to go down the stairs in her house, sneak in, go to the bathroom. Anyway, and a friend referred me to Vivial, and I interviewed with Brad Chandler, and I interviewed with Gene Doran, and Gene said, he came in, he asked me one question. He goes, tell me a good story. I'm like, what? I don't know. So I tell him the story. Oh, he said, and make me feel something. That's what he said. And so I told him about the story of my sister passing away. I was like, I'm going to make this guy cry. I want this job, you know? And so I told him that story, and that was his only question. He said, if you can tell a story, you can sell. Then he walked out. I get in my car. Brad Chandler calls me. I'm like 5 minutes away from the office I just left. And he's like, hey, I want you on my team, but you have to answer because our Linda wants you too, and she's going to call you. And I was like, yes, right? Like I didn't know anything from anyone. First day in, he's like, I'm gonna give you a shot, kid. You have no professional work experience, right? Like you can barely type an email. You showed up to the interview in your husband's clothes. Like what? It was my fiance's clothes. It was his sweater, and I thought Ralph Lauren's polos were like super fancy. So I wore his Ralph Lauren polo to the interview. Hot mess. It got so bad that my first week there, a bunch of the managers went to like Marshall's and bought me
Hmm.
professional clothes. And they were like, you need to dress like a professional. You need to act like a professional. And they started teaching me all these things. And
This,
so when
this
I,
all makes sense now because you had a policy on your team where like we dress the best in the office. Like no bullshit. Like our team had to dress the best every day in the office. And
was
you
it
know, other reps would come in, t-shirt, maybe a pair of jeans, whatever. No, collared shirt and slacks every day. If you want to wear a suit, fantastic. If you had a blazer, fantastic. But it makes sense now that you set the tone for that. It makes sense now.
yeah. But I think it's important too, right? Because there's, I call them lazy sellers. And if you're going to come in and you're going to be kind of all, and I think it's different work from home versus in office,
Yeah.
right? Work from home, I think a lot of us do our best work in our comfies. But if you're in an office, like you're setting the tone for what you want to make. You're setting the tone for what you want to make at home too. But I wanted our team, we got off track. So anyway, so I knew once they taught me how to dress, they taught me how to send a professional email, they taught me how to write proposals, and that I wanted to give that to somebody else. And so that's why I wanted to be a sales leader. That's what drove me to be a sales leader, is to find a bunch of misfits, like respectfully, like the person that has the drive, but just needs a little bit of direction, right? The Andre, the like arguably Tom, who today is so together and such a professional, but like he had so much potential. He just needed a little bit of structure, a good team, and numbers. We luckily had Haley, who had it like all together to help
Yeah.
us all through everything.
She's the
And
anchor for sure.
she's the anchor, right? And then we got McNabb, who just like came in Rico Suave and made the whole team elevate how they dressed, right?
Oh yeah.
And so it's I think a lot of being a leader is growing people. And it's finding those people that just need a shot. right? They just need someone to believe in them. And then they need that hard line, like you talked about, right? Do you remember what we would do when you show up late?
Oh yeah. Well, which one are you talking about? There's many things I was harassed about for being up late, like
Well,
showing.
we'd unplug your computer,
Yeah, that's exactly
right?
what I'm thinking. I'd be pissed.
So
I'd get there at 7:58 and my computer would be unplugged. So it takes me 5 minutes to plug it in. So I'm definitely late now on paper. But if I would have been there 15 minutes early, I wouldn't have had an issue.
wouldn't have had an issue, right? And so, and those are like life lessons that people take with them to grow professionally, right? Like it sounds like a pain in the ass, but it's stuff you guys will never forget, right? Um, when I was on Chad's team, I was 2 minutes late to a morning meeting. If you were 15 minutes late to his meeting, so I learned this from him. If you were 15 minutes late to the morning meeting, you were locked out. You could not get in. And that's where we would go over like vertical reviews. He'd pass out like again, remember we had to work off business cards. So he would pass out the business cards or um he brought in like mailers and stuff too on the team meeting. So you like wanted to be in that room.
Right.
And one time I was 2 minutes late and I was locked out and I was like, never again. That's a skill I'm going to teach somebody later. Right.
Here I am.
Here you are. But it's like those little things that dress professionally, right? Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. If you want to make $150,000, yes, there's a math equation behind it, but do you believe in you to go do it? And showing up 15 minutes late every day is never going to get you there. Or even 2 minutes early is never going to get you there. Showing up in a t-shirt and jeans, never going to get you there. I cannot tell you the amount of conversations we had about reps that aspired to be managers. And it went right back to, oh, well, they're late all the time, or oh, they just look really sloppy. They're not going to look good on a call, right? Their mouth is out of control. And we all know I cuss like a sailor, but when I'm in the room with the higher ups, I got it on lockdown.
Yeah.
So it's teaching those skills that I think is extremely important to get people to their goals. It's not just the math. It's everything else outside of that. It's learning how to walk, how to talk, learning to believe in yourself. It's learning about getting rid of some of those personal habits that stop people from being great sellers. So, Nick Huffman, right? Love him. Procrastination station. As stupid as that sounds, like how many times have we heard that? But like for him, we legit turned it into a train. And like we would work through, okay, did you leave that at the station or are you getting it done today? And we would walk through that over and over and over and over and over and over. And so like now his stuff's on time. His stuff's on time every time because for 2 years it was, hey, are you leaving it at the station or are you gonna be here at 5? Like what's going on with that? To where in his personal life, right? Not just professional, personal life, he can get things done in a timely manner. And so I think that that's like really, really important. And it's just those little things. Like we can talk about all sorts of stuff, but the thing I want people to really take away from this is if you want to make $100,000, $200,000, you get to a big company, you can make over that. It starts with you before it starts with the numbers. So getting things like Extreme Ownership, fantastic book. There's a story in it where, and this is like for like funnels. I think this is really funny. It really has nothing to do with funnels in this book, but that's where my head goes because I connect everything to sales. Is it talks about this guy is he's in charge of a project and he's got to get everything all together and he plans it all out and A, B, C, D, all this stuff. And then at the end of it, it's an outside event, it rains. And he gets chewed out by his boss and his boss is all mad. And he's like, well, I didn't know it was going to rain. And the boss comes back and says, you own that rain. You should have had a plan for the rain. That is your fault. It is not Mother Nature. Like you own everything. And that's extreme ownership, right? Is owning every little piece. So I think that book's fantastic. If you're going to get into sales, read that book. because it talks about, you can't say, oh, that customer didn't buy. Well, you didn't have a full enough pipeline for that to matter. Like if your pipeline was overflowing, remember we talk about the big bucket, the like theme park bucket that would just dump, and you have to constantly be adding, and then eventually it dump, but there's still water at the bottom, and then it does it over and over. And so extreme ownership is owning every piece of that. It's owning your math formula. It's owning showing up on time. It's staying 20 minutes late. It's taking a Saturday call. It's dressing professionally, whether you feel like it or not, right? So extreme ownership is a great start. Then you got to figure out your leading indicators.
Yeah, I think that is all very true. But I wish that we would have started with that before the numbers, because now I want to clarify, because you were so right. I think it starts with the micro habits that lead to you building the foundation of a successful person. And then when you throw the data and the numbers, right, and the KPIs are all in the mix, right, and you have your funnel and your pipeline set up, then it's much easier, right? Like with me, for example, you had to break, you pretty much had to break me like a horse, right? Like, like a wild horse, you had to break me out of these bad habits. I had a 45-minute commute, but you literally one day just sat me down and was like, Nate, listen, what time do you leave your house? And I was like, I don't know, 6:45. And you like, Nate, if you realize you left 15 minutes earlier, you would never have an issue about being late.
Yeah.
And what did I do? I woke up 15 minutes earlier. I left 15 minutes earlier, and it worked like a charm, right? Like it was very seldom that it was an issue. And if there was an issue, it's because there was an accident or something serious. It wasn't like, oh, Nate's just scrambling to get to work. Like,
Yeah.
and also too, like there's other things, like my organizational skills were shit before I went to your team. And
Yeah.
like my notes would be all over the place. You'd be like, Nate, where's this? And I would have to, rumble through 1,000 things to get there, right? We worked on these micro habits that allowed me to just even be possible to be successful. Like there was all
Yeah.
these roadblocks in the way of small things that could be fixed, but like maybe I just overlooked them or never thought to be fixed. And I also wanted to say too, like it's funny how you said like you wanted a team of misfits, because that's what you had. Like
Yeah.
we were the we just had a team of all walks of life, race, color, religion, creed, everything you could think of. We were just
Everything.
all over the place, backgrounds, whatever. But we were the best team in that company's history consistently. And it wasn't even close to other teams.
No, we broke 21 company records. And so I think there's like, so if we're talking about like leadership, right? Like if you're going to lead people, if you're going to lead sales reps, there's three things that people have to remember, right? The first thing is knowledge. So whether it's a personal micro habit or a professional skill, whatever, it's knowledge. Like, do they have the knowledge and the understanding of what's expected and how to accomplish that? Like, do they have that knowledge? And the second step is skill. Do they know how to physically or mentally or articulate what they're trying to accomplish? And the last piece is application. And so quite often it doesn't have to be this long drawn out process. Sometimes it's like you said, let's use you being late, for example. I think the world needs to know that we used to call you late Neckner instead of but
And what's funny? Video is not the first job to call me that.
yeah, that's bad. But like let's start with that, right? Like knowledge. Did anyone ever give you the knowledge, which sounds asinine, but it's true, right? Like I didn't even know how to like brush my teeth when I was a kid, baby, right? Like no one teaches you. You have to know that. It's knowledge. You don't just wake up and you're like toothbrush. So maybe no one taught you that skill. Here's the knowledge, Nate. You need to wake up 15 minutes earlier, get your ass on work on time, or you ain't gonna have a job. Okay. And then there's the skill. Okay. Give me your phone. Let's move your alarm up 15 minutes. Don't change it. Okay. Then the application. Now you have to make sure that maybe you're checking the map before work. You have a 45-minute commute, maybe there's construction. Your application would be checking that to make sure that you're never late again. So doing that from every aspect, even if it's like a pitch, like knowledge. Do you even know how the hell to pitch? Do you even know what you're talking about? Okay, do you have the skill to do it? Do you have that personality that's going to connect with the buyer? Are you very buyer centric? Are you doing it for the right reasons, not to make a paycheck? And then application, let me watch you do it. Did you hit steps A, B, C, and D? And so I think if I took that across everywhere on the team, right? It wasn't just your numbers. It was um, from dress code to like you remember Steve
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Steve. So like Steve's knowledge was very much like mine. Clothing. No idea. He had no idea how to dress. Like, and so we had to get him, he always wore large polo shirts. And like Steve's not a big guy, right? And so
Yeah.
just like he swam in it. And I was like, dude, you don't like thug nasty, like not gonna work. We dress sharp. And so we got him a medium. And we taught him, Steve, you're a medium. It's crazy as that sounds, right? And then like you tuck your shirt in, your belt goes on the outside. Just little
Right.
stuff like that. Killed it. Came in. He was probably one of the best dressed guys on the team for a long time, right? Like, and it's that knowledge, that skill, the application. Okay, now do it over and over and over and over again. Um, even to being like a part of, right? Like, what was it? Teal Thursday? What was that
It
day that
was
we all
Seafoam Thursday. And
Thursday?
then we had remember we had Well Dressed Wednesday where we'd all come in a suit.
Well dressed Wednesday and his suits
Yeah.
and dresses, right? Like it's
Yeah.
those little things that make people feel a part of that elevate the individual. Like I wasn't doing that for Ken Jones, who dressed like a pro golfer every single day. Like, but you do that for the reps on your team that don't know how to, but because the entire team does it and they're all part of, they're getting that cadence. And then when it comes to the daily tasks of the job, it's the same thing. That's why I give you guys the numbers and I teach you. Here's the knowledge of how to get to your numbers. Here's the skill. This is like, can you go do it? Can you load up your phone burner to make the 100 calls? Can you disposition your leads? Can you go look at how many you're at in Salesforce? Okay, now I'm going to stalk you. Here's your application. Go do it. And so when you do it in that format and you structure, and it's not, I don't know, you tell me, did you feel micromanaged?
Yeah, sometimes. But
Okay.
hindsight, and I'm an honest man. So hindsight 2020, right? When like for example, like me, I can't say always, but like whenever I had my 8 click moment, I killed it. And it was just like I was a consistent writer for you. I'm sure you never had to worry about me hitting my numbers, right? And I would normally hit 2, 3 times my numbers per month, right? So when I would hit my numbers and I'd be 300% to goal, right? And it's the second day of the month for whatever reason, and you're on me about not clocking out for lunch, right?
Yeah.
Like those are things where I'm like, dude, I'm doing my job, just leave me alone, right? Hindsight's
Yeah.
2020. You're trying to break these bad habits so Nate can give you the complete package, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not fair for me to be good at sales and shit on operations, right? It's not fair.
Yep.
Because there's guys out there like Tom who are good at both, right? There's
Yeah.
girls out there like Haley who are good at both, who never miss a beat, who write, 300, 400% of her objectives, but has also never made one time clock issue with, right? So like,
Yep.
in the moment, I'm like, fuck, leave me alone. But in reality, hindsight 2020, here we are 3 years later. I'm like, I'm very thankful for these kick in the asses because it has made me more punctual with my time management skills, as you said earlier, and my operational skills about clocking in, clocking out, doing this. And I don't have to do it anymore. I'm salary, it's different. But when I did though, like those things were able to be integrated. So I would say, sometimes yes, but every moment and it wasn't often, but like every moment that I was micromanaged, it had a reason behind it. It wasn't like I took a piss and you messaged me like, hey, why aren't you on the phone? Right?
Yeah.
It
No,
was
I don't
never
have
like
time for
that.
that.
Right. It was like, hey, Nate, like, and like the one time you did it too, and I was really actually, once again, I appreciated it now, maybe not the moment, but you were like, Nate, your call volume has dropped. You went from like 800 calls a week or whatever to like 400. And my response
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah, and my response was like, yeah, but I'm like 200% to goal. And you were like, it doesn't matter. Like
Yep.
to be consistent, the number of calls you have to make. Like the numbers don't lie, Nate. And I was like, fuck, she's right. Like,
Yeah.
and what happened the next
Yeah.
month? I still hit goal, but it wasn't 300% over. It was like,
No. It was like I think it was like 115. And then
right,
you were like, oh, like if you want to make 150, 200,000, you have to. It does not matter.
right.
Um,
The data's there.
yeah. And I think part of it too is just like especially developing people. Like that's my favorite part of anything I do. Like thrive. Well, so the last company I was at, I ran a team of sales enablement, sales effectiveness, right? So not sales reps. These are your operations people. And they are amazingly insane, like absolutely brilliant individuals that had so much untapped potential to do other things operationally, right? So we were like mainly focused on the methodology, sales loft, lead cadences, those types of things. And I had this one guy, Brian, his name's Brian, and he comes in and he's like, "Hey boss, I want to own a technology." And I was like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." Like he was one of those like ramblers, right? Where you pull up the slideshow and you're reading
Oh boy,
the slide word for word, but then
you're not supposed to.
also sharing way too much information on top of it when they're like, "Okay, just tell me if this technology is profitable," right? And so I worked with him, and he was also like, he wanted everybody to know all of the hard work he was doing, right? So braggadocious, all this stuff. And this is stuff he'd tell you today, like that he worked through. And so rewind, like I used to drive him up a wall because every time he would send something in the team chat on Slack, like he'd say, "Oh, I just got this done for you guys. It's uploaded in the SharePoint." I would be like, "Do you want a cookie?" Like, why you're doing it to brag. We all know we all get the notification. Like this isn't what it's gonna be like. We don't raise, I think as leaders, we don't raise boastful people, right? Like you should teach them humility. Whether you are, like you said, 200% to goal on the second day of the month, or honestly, he's like a golden gem, Brian is. And like he does now own a technology, by the way. We like developed him and shaped him, and now he owns two technologies there, which is fantastic. But he had to learn how to get humble because if you can't get humble, you can't learn. And if you can't learn, then you can't reach your goals. Like you're doing a podcast right now, like Dan Cheseldine, right? Good old Danny
Big
Dimes. Like
dimes.
he wanted to start a pressure washing business, right? So what did we do? We gave him accountability. We made him also show up on time. We also made him dress nice. We also gave him a math equation, but I didn't give him a math equation to make $200,000. I gave him a math equation to buy his first pressure washer. Here's how you get it. Is that what you want to go do? Let's go start it. Let's go start a company together. I didn't care. And I think that's often where leaders go wrong. I knew Brian was going to leave my team one day and go own a technology and join on DevOps. Like I knew he was going to go to DevOps, but if I don't embrace who he is now and break down those boastful characteristics and get them to be able to learn, they'll never thrive where they go next. And so, um, leading people into their passions, into their like you wanted, was it that Charger?
No,
It was a motorcycle. First it
Chrysler
was
300S.
yeah, but wasn't the motorcycle before it?
The
What
motorcycle
was
was,
the first
yeah.
was before it? And now we built the first plan off of the motorcycle, right? Like it was nothing else. It wasn't like it was here's how you get your freaking motorcycle, Nate. How bad do you want it? Here's what you have to do.
By the end of the year, I bought two of them.
Yeah, and you
Yeah, I crashed the one. Whoops.
crash one. um, but it's the same. Like if you're in leadership and you get a human, um, your responsibility, I believe, is to make them better, right? If they want it. If they don't want it, don't hire. Did I ever tell you the story about chip fillers? Actually, I asked you this question in your interview. I asked everyone this question in the interview. I don't know if you'll remember it. I've been asking this for like 7 years. It's a great question. So I'll ask you now again. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure I looked like an idiot then. I'm gonna look like an idiot now. I can't wait.
let's see if I'd actually hire you again. No. Okay, so you're at a party.
I remember
There's
this.
there's half a bowl of salsa and an empty chip plate. What do you do?
I don't remember my answer, but I would find more salsa.
You would find more salsa for
Yeah,
the empty chip plate?
yeah.
How are you going to eat the salsa?
Well, I figured this is just my brain doing some critical thinking here, Ashley. So if I fill up the salsa thing all the way, people will wonder the same thing, and somebody who knows where the chips are, and they're going to go get the chips and refill it.
I would have not hired you.
Shit.
So I mean, actually, I don't know. I would ask you more questions too, because that is an interesting point. That's critical thinking is what you did there, right?
Right.
And so like often people answer, well, I would ask the host to go get the chips, right? Like I would just tell the host they're out of chips, right? And when I get that straight answer, like, oh, I just asked the host to get more chips, or I would just tell the host that they're out of chips and they'd go fill it. Like those aren't the people, the employees you want. You want somebody that is going to give you an answer like, well, I'd probably go to the pantry and look for the chips. Or you want someone that's going to go, well, I would ask the person next to me if they knew where the chips were. And I'd say, oh no, they're not available. Or even if they do say like, yeah, like I'm going to go ahead and ask the homeowner where the chips are. I'm like, oh, the homeowner left to go to the store. What are you going to do? Like you know nobody. What are you going to do? Um, because you want somebody that's going to use that creative out of the box thinking, and you want somebody that is going to look at it as one of my favorite. Her name was Angela. She was one of my favorite interviews. Her answer was so fantastic. I was like, she went to Alex's team. It was BS,
Angela.
but
She was in my training class. Yeah, I remember Angela.
yeah, Angela
She's
Case.
great.
She went to, yeah, she was so good. Um, Her answer to that question was, well, first I would look in the pantry. And if there wasn't in the pantry, if I couldn't find the pantry, I would go ask every other person there. Probably start off with like, if I knew a sibling or something like that. And if I didn't know, then I would just go to the gas station and get more chips. Right? It was like this long, she went through like 17 people. I said, why wouldn't you ask the host? And she's like, well, it's their party. I don't want to bother them.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's the person. If you're a manager, that's the person you want. You want somebody that's going to go solve that problem, use creative thinking or critical thinking to just get the job done. It's a job that needs to be done. I'm going to go do it. Right. And so for all of the misfits on our team, well, not the ones that I got inherited, the ones we picked as a group, right? Our hires. They all had critical thinking skills. So then it's just knowledge, skill, application. You said I would put up more salsa in the bowl so somebody else is like, where's the chips? Like that's critical thinking.
I was going to
Maybe
manipulate
not.
somebody to putting the chips on there for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, everyone's got their way of doing it. But people need to look for chip fillers, right? Find those chip fillers.
Right. That's interesting. I do remember that question. I can't remember I have no idea what I said before, but I mean, obviously it worked because you brought me on your team. But um, that's a really interesting thing too. And I think people, I want to just kind of bring it back really quick because I wanted to say this earlier, but when we go into that little side thing there, I think it's important what you said too about when you said, like, you told me this years ago, and you said like you should be gunning for my job just as I'm gunning for Chad's job, just as he's gunning for Rob's job,
Mhm.
just as Rob's gunning for Jim Moran's
Mark
job,
Lane.
or Mark Lane, then Jim, all the way up the ladder, right, all the way to Jim, right, all the way to Big Jim. And I was like, damn, like she gets it, like she doesn't want me to be a pawn underneath her forever. She wants me to grow because if she grows and if she builds a team full of winners, that makes her look like a rock star. And like, why wouldn't they move her up? And then one of us gets moved up, and then we get our own team, then we make them, and then the hierarchy of scale just keeps going, right? So like,
Mhm.
whenever you said that, I think what you just were able to do was create such obviously an award-winning, record-breaking team, but like the culture on our team was unmatched. I mean, out of everybody else in the company, I know for a fact if I had a flat tire on the side of the road, I'd call anybody up on our sales team on Teams, and they'd be there to help me, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we defended our own, right? Like, I mean, nobody talks shit on anybody in the company on our team. We defended our own like we were blood related, but we all had that winning atmosphere, right? Like, it's not too often in a sales organization. If I know, and I'm just going to use Tom as an example because I just saw him at my wedding, but Tom would never be in this category. But just for example, if I knew Tom was 150 bucks away from bonus land, like, you think I'm going to give him 30% of my deal that I have closing today? You're damn right I am.
Yep.
And vice versa. So like everybody got to eat and we all ate very well because of that culture that you kind of created. And we definitely had to, I don't want to sound rude here, but like we definitely had to wean out some of the uh not stronger members, right? Like,
Well, it goes back to earning your seat, right? Remember that?
right. Yeah, earning your
You
seat.
guys all had to earn your seat. And I think as a sales manager, I mean, quite candidly, what I'll tell you I did is I did the math on how much I wanted to make as a sales manager. And I graded you guys every quarter and I saw who was costing me money and who was making me money. And so that's where earn your seat came in, right? Like as the company, you guys had to write your minimum expectation for the team to be profitable. It didn't, there's no other way to slice that.
Yeah,
Okay. If the team did not write their monthly quota, the team's not profitable. Why have a sales team if it's not profitable?
right.
Okay. So that's earn your seat, that first and foremost. But then on our team, everyone had to hit above it, right? So if your quota was $2,000, our team it was 2,500. If our monthly team objective was 2,100, our team objective was 2,800. Why? And that came from what I wanted to make as a sales leader. It's okay to be selfish as long as you're selfless with your time. So you guys needed something, I was there, right? I was
No
on a
doubt.
sales call. I was teaching you how to do something. I sat and cold called next to people. Like, so it's okay to be selfish with your income if you're selfless with your time. It's not okay to be a dictator. If you're not going to go get your hands dirty, then you can't stretch your team. They're going to break. But if you're willing to get on there, if you're willing to, remember that, oh God, what was that roofer? It was me, you, and McNabb, and we were
Oh,
in the office
hold
on the
on, I
last.
got you. Koala Roofing, Philip Foot out of North Carolina, out of fucking uh Fuquay Varnia, North Carolina. I'll never forget.
Yeah,
How could I forget? How could I forget?
so we even printed his picture.
Yeah, we did print his picture and put it on McNabb's cubicle.
His cubicle. Um,
That's so
we were in that office right until 6 p.m. on a Friday, last day of the month, together, the three of us, right? Like all of us.
yeah,
And I think that that's important, right? Because I am going to push boundaries. I am going to ask more of you guys. You are going to have to earn your seat. And so the ones that were weeded out, like they knew their expectation. I said it to you. I said it to everyone they got hired. If you don't make $80,000, you will be fired. That's it. That's math. I did the
right.
math. This is your minimum expectation. If you do what I hired you to do, you'll have a job. If you don't, then you won't. You just won't have that on our team. And I think because you guys knew coming in, okay, this is how this team operates is I have to write my goal. I have to, each of you guys had a job, right? We had Andre who would set the appointments. We had Haley that would go over SEO and social pitches, right? Then Ryan got really good at those. And Tom was always our SEM guy, right? We had you who started off as an appointment setter and then flipped to closer for our new hires, like after your it clicked moment, right?
Sure, for sure.
So when everybody has a role like that, that's when families are formed because it's going to be Ken Jones who's cold called 800 times, doesn't know what else to say, who goes over to Nate and goes, I don't know what to do. And you go, dude, tell him a bad joke, bad dad joke, and then get back at it. Like it's going to be those types of things. You're like, Big Kev who would just come in and like cheese ball and smile. Like that was Kevin's role. Like whether anyone wants it, Kevin and Andre were the goofballs that would
Yep.
just show up, smile, and do their job. Like
You got the job done.
that's it. They got the job done. If you were sitting there goofing off, like you knew they were going to sit there on their phone and like you didn't want to be that one not calling while they were calling. And so I think because everybody knew what it took to earn your seat and that was real, right? And then
Yeah.
everybody knew that you all had goals that you were going after. We shared our whys, right?
Yeah, where's your goal, by the way? Why have you not bought your Raptor?
I know, because I bought a bigger house.
Okay. You know. Fair
Because
enough.
I got my fireplace in my house,
It's a good
in my
trade-off.
backyard.
But
Yeah,
I
my
remember, like
backyard.
every rep though, like every rep on our cubicle, you either had us post it and write it on our cubicle, or you had to have our screensaver.
Yep.
And like it would be your why, like what you do, and like some people would have something noble, like my kids, my family, I want to buy my parents a house, whatever the hell it is. And here's me with a motorcycle and a Chrysler 300, just two materialistic things that I didn't even need, but it still motivated me at the time. And what
Yeah.
I think is really interesting too about our team, and once again the culture that you cultivated was like we would have newer reps join, you know what I mean? I'm not going to name names, of course, because they're great people, but it just wasn't a good fit. They would quit willingly because they couldn't meet our expectations, not your expectations, but like the team's
Yeah.
expectations. Like they have everybody on the team doing double, triple their quota, right? And we're all kicking it.
Mhm.
They can't pull their weight. They know that, so they wean themselves out. And
Mhm.
that's hard to do. That's hard. It's hard to make somebody be like, "Hey, man, you guys are just too good. I can't do this."
Yeah, I think it's crazy. So our last year before the company was bought, right? We had 12 people on our team. We had 8 people, 8 out of the 12 that were on the Achievers Club trip. Like
That's
those
true.
are that's insane, right? Like the when the team is stacked, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like, and it is intimidating. It is intimidating, but then we get the reps in that can play ball, right? Then you get those top recruits as a leader, right? Like let's take it from a leader perspective. Like, why would you want to build a team like that? Why would you want them all competing for each other? I'll never forget the day that oh I don't want to say his name. I thought about it, but
Give me
he came over to.
give me some
I'll say it.
context. Give me
It's
some
cute.
context.
It's cute. It's cute.
Oh, Quinn. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. When Q came over and he was on Alex's team, he was on a final written morning, and Rob asked him, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to move to her team. And Rob pulled me in, and I was with Quentin, and Rob was like, "You think you can make it? You can't make it on Alex's team. You think you can make it on her team?" And Q said, "Yeah, I just need the structure." Right? Q was number 5 in the staff rankings. So he didn't get to go on the trip, but he started that year almost fired and then finished the year number 5. So he joined our team in March.
Made some
And
killer
by that,
money, found his niche, and rocked it.
yeah, like right, and it's because he got a structure, he got a plan, and he could work backwards. And he bought his house. I don't know if you knew that, but he finally bought his house. He first had his condo, but now he has a big house. He called me 2 months ago to tell me him and his girlfriend closed on it. I was so excited. But it was 3 months ago. It was a little while ago, but it's that you want to build your team. You want to build your powerhouse so that when people come in the door and all these other hungry managers, right? Like how many times did you hear other reps go, "Oh, I want to be on your guys' team. How do I get on your guys' team? How do I get on your guys'
At
team?"
one point, actually, you remember they tried to restructure our team because it was unfair. They tried to steal.
They did. They took Dan.
I know they took Dan, but they didn't. They tried to take someone else too, and I can't remember. They tried to make another trade to somebody else's team, and you were like, "This is bullshit." Like I made this person. Like I can't remember who it was. It wasn't me, but I can't remember who it was. But like, oh, I'm having to draw a blank. But anyways, they tried it. We were so
So
damn good.
McNabb.
Well, that was
So
one.
they
That
took,
was one. But there
yeah.
was
So they
somebody
took.
else too, and I can't remember who it was. But
Well, that's when we got Q, they traded Dan.
that's right. That's right. But
Rob took, and
I
then
took Dan.
Rob took Dan, and then who who was it?
They literally said like we were just so good, it's not fair. Because our team would compete with other teams for prizes, right? And like but it was like what, like 9 months straight, we won every fucking prize.
No, it was okay. So it wasn't that they took people; it was that I got last dibs on interviews. So, and I was so mad, because that's like when Angela Kayes came in, and oh God, what is his name? He works with you guys now. Slick back hair, Rico
Gavin.
Suave, Gavin. Gavin came in,
Gavin is
and
a fucking monster. Yeah, Anthony
Anthony
Coleman.
Coleman, that one made me mad because it was a referral from our team
Yeah. From
to have him hired
was it
from
Andre?
Haley. No,
Haley.
it's Haley.
Haley's dad
Haley's
knows him.
referral to join our team.
Yeah.
And then they told us, no, like, we can't have him. We're too good. Like, so he got put on another team. And so it was like, those, like, that's okay though, right? Like, that just proves. And I think it also elevated and pushed you guys now because you were like, oh, we got to step it up. Anthony's coming in selling 4 or 5K. Here comes Angela selling 3K. Like, Gavin comes in, drops 8K his second month. Like,
Yeah.
right. And so that's good. That's healthy competition. And
Well,
I
we had
think
a
it's cool. I
target on our
think.
back. That's what you said. You go, guys, they put a target on
Mhm.
your back. Everybody's gunning for us. And all
Mhm.
that did, like, some teams be like, oh, fuck this and shut down. But like we just lit up. I mean, we just like, if you think we were running on full cylinders then, we just added a full tank of gas and kept going, right? That's when the terms all gas, no brakes came out, right? And we just
That's very true.
like we just literally blew it up. I mean, the expectation was this, which was still above this, and we just blew it out of the water even more so because of that vibe and that kind of camaraderie that we had, within us.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah.
commissioner basically blocked it like a trade. That's exactly. I mean, that's what happened, right? Like they didn't want us. They didn't want the super team to be formed even better than what it already was. But the
Yeah.
difference is like it'd be different if we took. It would be a difference if you took all the top reps from every team and crammed them into your team. But you took people like myself who were fucking nosebleeds were the quality and made them into a top tier rep within 8 months. And you did
Yeah.
that multiple times over. You did that with Dan. You did it with me. You did it with some other guys too, and I'm only going to name Dan because he's like a brother to me and I like to bust his chops. But, there was a
Yeah.
lot of guys in our teams that sucked at the beginning.
Yep.
It's
Oh,
just,
there's like, I mean, God love Andre. Like, Andre couldn't type an email either. Like he didn't know how to do any of it. And I think that's when the rubber meets the road. Can you take a completely unpolished, can you take a rep on a final written warning and make them profitable? And so like, I think it's because my brain works that way, right? Knowledge, skill, application, structure, um, is what's made me like so successful to keep growing, right? Like I got to run a global team of effectiveness, right? Like, so we worked with Canada, Australia, United States, and um, building a scalable, repeatable process for an entire sales organization,
right.
making sure that the baby rep that walked in the door that could barely write an email, like I genuinely, and I told I call my coaches, I don't call them reps, I call them coaches for the enablement team. Like I told them all about you and Andre and like Nick and all these reps that just needed a structure and a system. And I'm like, you guys, these are the reps we're building this program for. We're building it for the young guy, Danny Huffman, right? We're building for Danny Huffman, the young guy that just graduated college, who has so much gumption and a vision for what is like. He might not want to be a sales rep forever, but he's got a goal he's trying to get to, right?
Yeah.
Like Dimes. Dimes wanted to run his very successful pressure washing business now, by the way. I don't know if you've checked out their page, but they did this like massive project. And
I
so it's
talk to
like
Dan almost every day. Yeah, he's killing it. And it all started
killing
it
it.
all started in Huddle Room C.
In Huddle Room C,
It all
man.
started in the dungeon. Like
That's
it all
so true.
started
In the
there.
dungeon. Yeah. But right, but there's so many other reps that have gone and done this and like built businesses, that started podcasts. Like right, like Tom built his house. Haley bought her first house. You bought your first house. Q bought his first house. Like right, but when they come to you, like they just need structure. Everybody wants structure. Nobody wants to ask for it, and they need discipline, right? And so every time we would build these programs, I would talk to them about it, and their brains would churn, right? Because they're like me, they're nerds. They're like looking at numbers and operation stuff, and I'm like, no, go back to the guy who can't type an email. Is this easy for him to make money?
Yeah, because it starts
Right?
there.
It starts there. Is it easy for them to understand? Can you write it in knowledge, skill, application format for their manager to be able to teach them this? Right? If you can put a deck together and the manager can go, yes, I can do that, then you win. If you put a deck together and a frontline sales manager goes, yeah, looks good, and they never present it to their team, it's bullshit, throw it away, start over, right? So I think just having my brain wired the way that it is, like the weird nerdy way that it is, and having that compassion for people to be, I didn't come up from much, but I knew, right? Again, like, don't take my house. It's my kids are never going to have to hear that, and I want to give that to everyone else. I want people like you. Like, let's be honest, you were like a frat boy, right? Like you were like the you had your like boat shoes and no, I'm just kidding.
I never
But
even went
like
to
you were,
college, which is funny that you said that. But yes, I dressed like a straight
but I know, but you
douchebag.
dressed like a straight like frat boy, right? And you showed up
Sure.
late and you just kind of did your thing. You had this like ego that was like, I'm better because I know better. And it's not you, it's the product of how you were your life, right? Like we all have life stories. But
Right.
like if somebody can take a second and look at you and go, okay, this person right here, this young gentleman who I know bullshitted me 90% of his interview, but he had the gumption to bullshit me to get this job. And I can teach him structure. If he can tell a story, he can sell. It is up to the leader to build the rest, right? And Gene Dorn knew that. Like, ever told you about my Mount Rushmore of humans?
Yes, and I know Gene's on there, but I don't remember the other guys.
Yeah. So for those that don't know what my Mount Rushmore is, like I don't like dead presidents. I think it's creepy. So I just made my own. And so on there I have my pawpaw, right? And so my pawpaw's a world Purple Heart World War II vet. And he would teach me things like fear, right? Fuck everything and run or face everything and rise. It's your choice, kid, right? Be where your feet are, right? And he would tell me that all the time. Or I'd be like, oh my God, I'm gonna fail this final exam. And he'd be like, where are your feet? And I'm like, on the sidewalk, and be like, good, be there, right? Like, don't worry about that, be where your feet are, right? Um, so like my pawpaw's on there. And Gene Doran's on there. And Gene's on there because he would just like, I'll never forget this one. He said, don't be the drop of black ink in a glass of milk. Right. So one bitching session, one, this is bullshit. When I was a rep, I went off. They changed our account plan and I lost like $2,700 on one sale and I was just like done. And this is where he taught me that. And he's like, so one bitching session will cost you the integrity of who you are. One drop of black ink in a
Ruins the
glass
glass
of
of milk.
milk ruins the glass of milk. It doesn't, you can still drink it, but it ruins the integrity of that milk, right? It's now spoiled. And there's plenty of other things, but that one I'll never forget. And so Gene's on my Mount Rushmore. And and there's there's two spots open in Mount Rushmore. Right now it's those two. They kind of sit there. And from time to time I flip people on and off, right? There's like my temporary ones, like Jim McCusker, a great guy. He taught me a ton when I was at the last company and really, really look up to him, right? Like he was on Mount Rushmore for a minute when I was going through a bunch of stuff. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's see how this relationship keeps going, right? Like you're not dead, so you can't permanently be there, but like let's see if you're still there, right?
Yeah, sure. I get
Um,
that.
Ray, like he went up on Mount Rushmore, his name's Ray Bonus, and like he was really guiding me through some crazy enablement stuff that like I just couldn't wrap my brain around, but like coached me up as a person as well. Was like, hey, you can't cuss out a C-suite executive. It's like not the thing to do. And I'm like, but they're wrong, right? And so then he like coached me through that. And so I think it's important that people really look at those things of like who who do you like who do you want to become? Where do you want to go? How can you grow into that? Can you take those catchphrases, if you will, like all gas, no brakes? Like people, I still say that. I still say that. Like our Funky Bears is on my Mount Rushmore.
Oh yeah.
Like straight up. Like I I want to write a Netflix series about it. Let's get the game back to but seriously, right? Because it was you guys were learning how to become most of you are like adults. Like you guys were young adults, right? And like
You gotta
and I
think,
was like
Ashley,
learning how to be
I was 22 when I started working with you. I'm 27. I joined you fresh 22, didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground, and you were what, 27,
I was
26?
what? No. So yeah,
26, turning 27, because you're 31, I'm
26.
27 now.
Yep.
Yeah, so like obviously I come into you as literally a punk kid, literally a punk kid. And you yourself is a kid still, but you're still growing.
Kid,
Right.
kid.
Right. And then like it's just, oh my God, it's crazy to think just any of us, like how far the progression has came of maturing, adulting. Like never in my life, I don't know if you know this, I'm the first person in my immediate family to ever own a house.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like that's a goal of mine I never thought was feasible. Like I
Hmm.
never thought I'd be a homeowner. Never, ever, ever, right? Now, like we live in a decent house, and if we wanted a bigger house, we could go get one. Like we're not worried about things like that. Like the take my house thing, like that's a conversation And Celeste and I, we're working on having, a kid. We're trying to start a family. And, you know, I've told her a million times, like, listen, like I went without for so much when I was a kid. Like our kids will never go without. Not saying they're gonna be
Mhm.
spoiled, but like if they want
Yep.
to go to fucking Disney World, like we're gonna go. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna go. Now they're not gonna get a toy every time we go to the store. There has to be limitations.
No. Right. Like my thing is like I don't want them to be like, Mom, I need new shoes. Like I want them to pick out their new like I love a good bargain. So like I'm still gonna go to the clearance section and be like, do you like these Nikes
Oh,
before I
you're
go
the
to the
cheapest
next?
person I know.
But I still want them to pick out the shoes, right? Like
Yeah.
I know I am pretty cheap.
You are cheap, but it's for a good reason, right? And like,
Mhm.
I wish I had that quality because I'm not cheap and I'll go out there and piss away money sometimes on things I don't need. But the good news is I have the skill set to bring it back in, so it's okay. But in your situation, right? Like you had a situation growing up where, money was not on a tree outside that you can pick from. So everything of yours is value, right? Hence why you're using a camera that is old, but it still works.
Yeah. I
You
think also, right, like it goes back to the numbers. Here we go again. I want to retire at 55. I
Yeah,
don't want to not work. I want to retire from corporate America at 55.
right.
So in order for me to do that, I know what I need to make. I know what I need to save. I know what I can spend. I literally have on my banking app like limits for the month. So if I want to go and buy, like I got denied for Twizzlers last month and I was so mad because I know, but it was $2.87 over, right? And my card was like, you're at your limit. Like, do you really, it asked like a couple questions, like, are you sure? Do you want to expand your limit by how much, right? And you got to type it in or whatever. And I was like, no. So I had to put the Twizzlers back. But it's like those little things that, like, do I really need those Twizzlers? No, guess what? I got some in my stocking from Santa. So, there's that. And I won anyway. But it's like that mentality is like, where do you want to be? Like, I want to be at a place where I can, um, it's like it's all for my kids, right? Like, if they want to play sports, like, I don't want to make them, I might still make them go learn how to earn that income, right? Collect the cans, do the thing. You can't even return them in Missouri, but I might still have them go knock on the door and collect cans. But I don't want to ever have to be in a position where I have to tell them no, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
going to make them work for it, right? But if as long as it's like pursuing their education. So Lincoln really, really, really loves video games, right? So he's 7 years old. For those that don't know, my kid's autistic, but he's extremely smart. So he started reading at 3, like full books. He reads chapter books now at 7. He does multiplication now and math. Um, but he codes video games. So he really wanted to do Code Ninjas for summer camp. I don't know if you know how expensive Code Ninjas is, but it's like $198 a day. Like,
Yeah. My
stupid
last
expensive.
company I worked for was above them in the Wildwood town center there in that
Oh,
so
okay. So we were there like all summer.
yeah,
Like,
you were below me while I was above you working. So yes, I'm aware of their pricing. It is not one is not easy, right? It's not easy
yeah.
and it's very expensive.
So that's like one of the things he wanted to do. I said, what do you want to do over the summer, right? I want to go to Code Ninjas. And that's why I do what I do because I want to keep inspiring him to chase his dream. Like he wants to open Link's Legos. He wants to learn how to code his 3D printer to make custom Lego minifigures and then sell them. And that's his goal. And so we're working towards his goal. We're teaching him budgeting, right? Like how much is it actually going to cost him to buy his machine? How many chores does he have to do? And then we take away $1 for bad attitude, right? Like those types of things that you teach your kids as you knowledge, skill, application, structure, right to that. So
Yeah, I love that because I always tell like people too, like it's too late for me. I'm 27. There's no way I'm gonna be a billionaire in my lifetime. There's no way. Like it just the numbers. I'm a big numbers guy too, as you know, and a lot of that's due to you showing me how numbers is literally the universe's language, and everything makes
mhm,
sense if you can quantify it in numbers. I will never be a billionaire, but my kid has every opportunity to become one.
mhm.
And it all starts with me and my habits and what you're doing with Lincoln and the other babies as well. Like I'm sure they're all learning these small micro habits from mom, and I mean it's definitely going to pay off. I mean, Not many
Hmm.
kids are reading chapter books at 7 years old that also have an idea of what the cost is going to be to start a business. Like
Yeah.
that's a very rare thing that you've instilled there. But imagine when Lincoln's 15 years old, he's got a little bit of money saved up and he wants to actually start his business and he can. He can go to high school
Yeah.
as well and have a side gig and all of his friends are gonna be like, "Oh my God, this kid is making crazy money and it's something that he's passionate about." But where did it
Yeah.
start? It started 8 years ago.
Right.
That's
You want to know what he's saving for right now?
let me hear it.
He's saving for a mini fridge. Do you want to know why?
I don't even want to hear this story anymore.
So I have a mini fridge in my office. It's from the last office.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, um, the one we won. Remember
You're
we bet
welcome.
Rob?
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Yes, you're welcome.
yeah. We bet Rob and we won. So I have that mini fridge. And
It's a nice mini fridge.
that's a nice one. And so now he's got like we redid his whole room, right? It's all Legos, Star Wars. He wanted a big kid room. And I mean, it looks like I'm not seeing pictures. It looks like a teenager's room because
Oh
that's
yeah.
how he likes it. It's very clean, And so he goes, Mom, I need a mini fridge. And I'm like, Lincoln, you don't need a mini fridge. Your juice boxes are downstairs. And he goes, yeah, but do you know how much time it takes me to go down the stairs? Because I could be spending that time building more Legos, right? So he's already thinking about the time value of money
Right.
and like
The
instead,
cost
and I'm
savings.
like, yeah, and I'm like, okay. So we looked up the mini fridge that he wants. It's $159. And I told him today he has to do chores. He doesn't want to do them. But it's those little things like, yeah, bud, you can get whatever you want. You want a mini fridge? We'll put a mini fridge in your room. You gotta buy it. Right. Although I did tell him if he can um make it to fifth grade on the honor roll, I will buy him one. He has to be on the honor roll every year, and at the end of fifth grade, I'll buy him a mini fridge.
He's got like another 2.5 years.
He's in first grade right now,
Oh,
so
4.5. Wow. Or three and a
four
half.
and a half. Yeah, but I mean, he'll see to test out, so he has to get his emotional intelligence up. So his intellectual intelligence is higher than his emotional. So he has the emotional intelligence of a 4-year-old and then intellectual intelligence of an 11-year-old. So once we get that kind of balanced out, then he can test into a better grade, but
Yeah,
higher grade. Anyway, well, it is 9:10, my friend,
yeah,
and you're an
definitely.
adult now.
I know I go to bed early, so I think we should end this thing here in a couple minutes. Real quick, I did want to. So I had talked about this on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and I have a good friend of mine, and a couple other people have asked me, basically like, hey, I want to get into the sales world. Like, where would you first do? And I've always said, hey, start small, go to get a part-time job in retail, go be a part-time server, something to where it's not high stakes, but you're able to learn and hone your communication skills, but also get the ideology of selling. Um, as from someone who literally went that route, I would love to hear your perspective. If I was a new guy and let's say I'm like your little nephew or whatever, your cousin. I'm like,
Yeah,
hey, Ashley, I want to get into sales. What should I do? What would you say?
yeah. So I think it's funny because I actually got my brother. So my brother actually is in sales now. So I don't know if you remember, but he was going to school to be a biomedical engineer,
Yeah,
right? Um, he decided that wasn't the route for him, and now he is lives in Italy. He's lived in Italy for 3 years, and he does sales. Needed sells like Ferrari car parts. But anyway, he's like, yeah, yo, sis, I want to sell. I want to make a boatload of money, right? Like, what do I do? And the first thing I told him to do is read Extreme Ownership. If you can't identify with anything in that book, then you should have no business getting into sales. You have to own it, right? And so he did. He read the book and he had a bunch to complain about. And we talked about it and we walked through those things. And then I told him to read the book, It's Your Ship. It's Your Ship talks about really it's a leadership book, but it talks about like guiding and leading people to own their own footprint, right? Like if your job is to sweep the poop deck, like I'm gonna sweep the poop deck the best I can. Like literal shit deck, right? I'm gonna get that thing so clean. And it talks about leading and building people to do that. And so I think when they start and if you can read those two books and you can start identifying with those two any piece of that, right? Like find a piece in those two books that you really cling on to. Like for me, it's like you got to account for the rain. Like I can't go into a major company rollout and be like, oh my God, but I didn't think about sales loft crashing in the middle of it. Like, no, I should have. That's my job, right? Like, and so for me, it's the rain. And it's your ship. It's talking about empowering individuals and becoming them best selves. Like I think, right, like be a better version of you every single day. 1% better. We talk about that all the time.
Right.
And um, so let's start there. I don't think it really has anything to do. And then it's storytelling. Like, like, can you tell a story? Can you walk up to a stranger and tell them a story and get them engaged? If you're not good at that, I don't give a shit what you sell. You're not going to be good at selling. Like if you can't own your own backyard and you can't have a natural conversation with somebody, those are hard skills to teach, right?
For
You
sure.
can't teach somebody to come out of their shell and just start bullshitting about almost Uber, right? Like you just can't do that.
That was a great idea, by the way. But
It was.
no, but I think you're right, right? Just like look at this. Like I'm thinking about it now, just like going back, like how many of your pitches and my pitches, like, do we even talk about product? It's
We don't.
maybe it's 20% of the conversation. The other 80 is building rapport, talking about other things that are relatable, right? These funny analogies that we talk about. Telling a story. That's what it is. That's 80% of it. Like you're telling your story is what's really doing the selling, and then the credits at the end of the story is when you're talking about products.
Yep. And I think it's really understanding. Like if you really want to get into small business sales, like let's say it's digital marketing. Like go walk into a business, ask them, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting into digital marketing sales. Can I shadow you for the day? Is the owner here?" Like you'd be amazed how many people go to a chamber of commerce, ask them, right? Like, "Can I shadow a business?" I learned so much by just sitting in the office of different business owners that made me be able to sell so much better alongside of like my family owning businesses. Like
Right.
I said, at like Osteo with Mike Valley for hours one day. I just sat there, watched him work, watched him go through and click all the tools, like figured out how he actually operated his business. And then it's identifying with what business owners really care about, right? They don't care, they don't necessarily care about the leads, right? They never care where they come from. They care about are they increasing their revenue?
Is my phone
Like they
ringing?
care about like right, yeah, like they care about being more productive and efficient. They care about increasing revenue, decreasing expenses, becoming a safe and stable business. Like, so talk to them about that. Don't talk to them about leads. Talk to them about, well, let's increase your revenue and decrease your expense. How does that sound?
Well, what did
Yeah,
you
that's
remember?
exactly what I want to do.
Remember what you told me. You were like, Nate, ask them what it would mean if we were able to increase their revenue. And it's a great question, right? So I was like,
Mhm.
you said like, ask the client, what would it mean if we could increase your revenue by 15%? Does that mean you get to hire somebody? Does that mean Christmas bonuses? Does that mean you get to take your
Yeah.
kid on a trip? And like these are the things that people like in their mind, they're thinking about it, but maybe they don't ever verbalize it, right? Like, oh yeah, if I damn, if you're Nate, I made $2 million last year. If you gave me 15%, I could do X, Y, Z. Like
Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think whenever you did that and you went into those businesses, you were able to see the day-to-day struggles and obstacles that they go through and really hear from them what they complain about, what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah. But they're not business. Like, I think that's another fault sellers do is they think of them as a paycheck, not a person.
Yeah.
And so like, if you remember, right, like I call everybody hi friend, I call everybody humans, like, oh, good morning, my friend, like to a complete stranger, even cold calling. And it helped. The reason I did that as a rep is like, even as a leader teaching people, is it helped me remember that they're just like a person. They're not this business owner. I'm not drooling for their money. Like I'm
Right.
genuinely here to help you and make your business like all you can dream it to be. And if I don't have the right fit for that, like I'm going to tell you because I'll there was Deer Creek. I'm going to go on another rant but real quick, but like Deer Creek pathology. They I pitched them this massive program because I thought it's what they needed. And then I went back to the board. I pitched them like $2,400. And then I went back and I looked at like IYP gold, silver, bronze, and like it was actually better. There was like less people competing in bronze and there was gold and silver. And so like they could get a bigger sorry, that was Josh. They could get a bigger ad for
You get
less
better
money.
market share.
better market share. Yeah, thank you. And so I went back and called them and was like, hey, actually, you guys only need to spend $1,200 a month. And they became one of my biggest referral partners. Like it was like orthodontist next, like, right, like they just a roofer, like, hey, you got to go to her, she tells you the truth.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sellers don't chase the number right in front of you, just like be honest, remember that they're a person, and go from there.
Yeah, and if you treat people right, they'll treat you right. That's just how it works. I mean,
Mhm.
well, generally speaking, though, you get some bad eggs out there, but you know, I've learned that from you. If I treat my clients right, give them the good, bad, and the ugly. If it's a good fit, fantastic, and if it's not, that's okay. But at least you know, no matter what happens, without a shadow of doubt, we are either a good fit or we're not. So,
Yep.
but I know you got to go back to being your mom and being the super wife that you are with Josh. So I'll let you get going, of course. But yeah, guys, if you made it this far, I just want to say thanks again for joining us. This was awesome having you on as a guest. And you know, if you can, like, subscribe, do whatever you do. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast stuff from. But Ashley, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. But as in the words of Nate Lechner, see you later, brother.
Yeah, see you later, brother.
Bye.